Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Quebec on October 30th, 2024. I am standing now outside the main entrance to the Palais de Congrès in downtown Montreal, and the reason why I've come here today is that this facility is hosting the two-day ministerial conference on the human dimension to the Ukrainian 10-point peace plan. The conference is being co-hosted by the governments of Canada, Norway, and Ukraine. There are a number of notable dignitaries from those and other countries, principally Western countries, in attendance at this conference, including the Canadian Foreign Minister, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, the Norwegian Foreign Minister, and momentarily it's reported that the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is going to address this conference himself. Now, I came here with one overarching purpose, and that purpose was to ascertain whether the participants in this conference believe that Palestinian lives are as important as Ukrainian lives. That may seem like an odd question to ask, especially to people of conscience for whom the answer is obvious, but I felt compelled to make this inquiry because if you look at the policies that the Canadian government has adopted with respect to Ukraine and Palestine, one is rationally compelled to conclude that the Canadian government attaches almost no value to Palestinian lives, whereas it attaches tremendous value to the lives of Ukrainians. For example, the Canadian government has imposed very severe sanctions on Russia, but has not imposed any sanctions whatsoever on government or military officials in Israel, notwithstanding the various findings of international bodies that Israel is plausibly committing genocide and has committed numerous other war crimes and crimes against humanity. The Canadian government has sent billions of dollars of weapons to Ukrainians and to the Ukrainian government, but has sent no weapons to Palestinians, in fact, has sanctioned Palestinian resistance groups and is providing weapons to the tune of tens of millions of dollars within the past year alone to the genocidal regime of Israel. And of course, the Canadian government has said that anybody, even Russian Canadians, dual citizens, who fight on the side of Russia will be punished, whereas Canadian citizens who are participating in the Israeli military's genocidal rampage in Gaza and the West Bank are permitted to do so without any fear of prosecution by the Canadian government. And I could go on. But the point here is that anybody looking objectively at the policies of the Canadian government and all Western governments with respect to Ukraine and Palestine can't come to any other conclusion but that these governments do not value Palestinian lives but attach great value to Ukrainian life. So I wanted to get the goods on these people and see whether, in fact, they hold that view. Now, after applying for accreditation, as I did this morning when I arrived at the conference, I quickly learned that I would not be allowed entry. And I have to say that this has been my typical experience with events organized by the Canadian government. I have been repeatedly denied over the past several years media accreditation, even though I am a card-carrying member of the press. I'm a member in good standing of the Canadian Union for Freelance Journalists. I have had hundreds of reports published in the Independent and even some on the corporate media. I have a very large body of work as a journalist. I've invested huge amounts of time and effort. I've reported from the front line. And there's no rational argument that I don't do journalism. You may disagree with my point of view, but certainly I do something that can fairly be described as journalism. And I have the formal qualifications to substantiate that I am a journalist. As it happens, the Canadian government never actually explains to me why it denies me systematically accreditation to the events it holds here in Canada, the country of which I am a citizen, and that's what happened today. While I was in the middle of waiting for the response to my application for media accreditation, I was approached by an officer of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who introduced himself to me only as Mark. He would not tell me his last name. He knew my first name even though I hadn't introduced myself to him. I don't recall ever having met the man. And he proceeded to say that I was not on the list of accredited journalists. And when I asked him why, he refused to answer. I protested that I deserved at least an explanation and finally demanded that I speak to his supervisor. At that point, he asked me to wait. He got on the phone, spoke to somebody, and after 15 minutes of waiting for an answer, he walked up to me and announced that he wasn't going to give me an answer, and he had been instructed simply to repeat that I was not going to be given accreditation. At that point, I pulled out my camera and I began filming him. I wanted him to state this on the record. I'll show you momentarily what happened when I did that.
Monsieur Marc, pourriez-vous m'expliquer pourquoi on ne me permet pas d'entrer dans cet événement? Could you please explain why I can't enter into this event, Mark? You've identified yourself as a representative of the RCMP. You refuse to tell me why I cannot enter this event, even though I am a member of the Freelance Union of Journalists in Canada. Mark, could you please offer me an explanation for why they will not allow me into this event, even though I am a registered journalist with a press card? Is it because the Canadian government doesn't like inconvenient questions about this depraved proxy war that has resulted in the destruction of Ukraine, and that cannot possibly be won, and that is being fought for reasons that have nothing to do with human rights and democracy? Is that the reason, Mark, why they won't let me in? Because nobody wants to answer tough questions.
I then had to improvise. So at that point, I was standing at the entrance to the part of this massive facility where this ministerial conference is being hosted, and all of these participants, dozens of them, were walking by me. So I simply pulled out my camera and began asking them one by one as they walked by whether they believe that Ukrainian lives are more important than Palestinian lives. Sir, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? You don't think so? Thanks for your honesty, sir. Excuse me, sir, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? You can't answer that question? That's a tough one, isn't it? Stumped. Okay, thank you. Took you a while, but you got the answer right after some reflection. Thank you very much.
Mine was on Ukraine.
Yes, a lot of minds on Ukraine here in this country, not too many minds on Palestine. Excuse me, gentlemen, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? No, you don't think so? I take that as a no. Thank you for your honesty, sir. I think that pretty much embodies this conference. Sir, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Excuse me, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Would you agree with that observation, sir? Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Sir, do you think Palestinian lives are worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Are they worth less? Do they deserve less military and economic support than the Ukrainian people? Are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives?
Of course.
Yes? How are you going to reflect that in your policies, sir? Excuse me, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Gentlemen? No answer? I thought that was an easy question. Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Excuse me, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? You don't know? Sir, are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Yes? No? Don't know? Are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Yes? No one seems to want to answer my question. I thought it was a simple question. Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives? Are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives? Simple yes or no will do. I'll take even a maybe. Excuse me, gentlemen.
Yes.
Are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian
Just
lives?
responded as much as Ukrainian lives. All the
Are
same.
they? So do you think that Canada should also be arming the Palestinians the way it's arming Ukrainians?
That's
After
a
all,
different question.
there are far more civilians have been killed in Gaza than Ukraine, sir. How do you justify not arming the Palestinians? Are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives? Are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives, people? Anybody? Sir, do you think that Ukrainian lives are worth more than Palestinian lives? Sir? I would have thought that's an easy question to answer, sir. Sir, are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives?
Sorry?
Are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives?
No comment.
No comment. Interesting.
Hi, are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives? Isn't that an easy question to answer? I would have thought that's a pretty simple question to answer. You seem stumped. Ukrainian lives, are they worth more than Palestinian lives? Are they worth more, sir? Just curious.
Excuse me once again?
Are Palestinian lives worth as much as Ukrainian lives?
Yeah.
Okay. So are you attending this conference here, this Ukraine
Yeah.
rights conference? Can you explain why the Canadian government is providing weapons and economic aid to Ukraine, and it is imposing sanctions on Russia, but it's not sanctioning Israel? It's not providing weapons to the Palestinian people. In fact, it's providing weapons to to the Israeli
Yeah.
genocidal regime. Can you explain that?
I cannot explain it,
Okay.
but I know
Do
that.
you think there's a consistency between those two positions?
I cannot comment actually, as I don't know.
You don't know.
But definitely, each human life
Right.
matters.
But shouldn't that be reflected in our policy? Shouldn't we be providing the support to the Palestinian people, the weapons to defend themselves, just like we're doing to Ukraine? Or they don't have a right to armed resistance? Only the Ukrainians do.
I cannot comment on that too, but I can say that each human life actually matters, and what's happening there is unacceptable.
Okay. Thank you very much, man.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
And I'm
it.
a Palestinian myself, actually.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised that you aren't prepared to acknowledge the Palestinian right to armed resistance. Would you acknowledge the Ukrainians have a right to armed resistance?
I cannot comment on that
Why not?
because I don't. I cannot acknowledge that there is actually freedom of speech. That's why I cannot comment on that.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Can I ask what organization you're with? Are
I'm
you
a student.
You're a student?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a student.
Here in Montreal?
Yeah.
Okay. I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Bye-bye.
much. Will this be published? You know, I'm a Palestinian myself.
Yes, I
and,
understand.
I know what's happening. And I'm from the city of Nablus, which is in Palestine.
I was there a few months ago.
Which is already. Where are you from?
I'm Greek.
Yeah.
I was in Palestine a few months
What's
ago.
happening is extremely bad. But I don't believe there's freedom of speech, as even here, even in those countries.
I agree with you. I'm a journalist, and they won't let me into this conference. So that's proof enough that there isn't freedom of speech because they know I'm going to ask these kinds
And
of
actually,
questions.
it's very nice of you
Yeah.
to stand and try to do to make a difference.
Thank you.
And what's happening in the West Bank is also definitely not in comparison to what's happening in Gaza, but what's happening in the West Bank is extremely bad as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As I'm from the city of Nablus, and the situation there is really very difficult. Nablus is in the West Bank. Extremely difficult. There is the apartheid system, everything, illegal settlements that's according to the UN isn't supposed to exist there. There are many streets where Palestinians aren't allowed to use, where others are allowed to use. Others include even tourists, not only Israelis. And even the rules are different. Everything is extremely different. So there's this apartheid regime which is very hard. Even the many checkpoints. You said you have been there.
Many times.
Yeah, but for a Palestinian, it's extremely
I understand,
hard.
yeah.
Even many Palestinians aren't allowed to even visit. For me, I'm allowed to visit, but I'm not allowed to. I'm allowed to visit only my hometown, which is Nablus. I'm not allowed to go around, and there are many checkpoints. Anything could happen to you, so it's extremely bad. In Gaza, it's another situation, which is way too hard.
Right. I understand. Thank you. Thank you
So
for your
actually,
time.
what you're doing is really very important. But
Thank you.
I don't believe there's freedom of speech here.
I agree with you.
And it's not only that there's no freedom of speech, but everyone is affected when they say what's supposed to be said as normal, as we want to stop the genocide, we want to stop all those bad stuff. I'm not talking about arming, but we need to stop the bad stuff.
But here they're talking about arming, right? They've come here to talk about arming Ukrainians. And what I'm trying to figure out
No,
is
in
why.
the conference, no.
Well,
You mean the batteries?
I'm talking about the Ukrainian conference. I'm not sure which
No, no, no.
conference you're at.
There's another conference.
You're at the climate security
No,
conference?
no. There's battery.
There's a which conference?
Battery. About the batteries.
Oh, so you
So I
aren't.
think
I thought you were attending the Ukrainian
No, no, no.
conference.
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no.
Okay. Well,
That's
sorry.
Why, that's why they haven't allowed you to.
Yeah. Hey folks, are Ukrainian lives worth more than Palestinian lives? Anyone care to venture an answer? Do Palestinian lives have the same value as Ukrainian lives? Excuse me, sir. Do you think that Ukrainian lives have more value than Palestinian lives?
It's a question I'm not in a position to reply.
I see. It's not easy to say they have the same value. Doesn't that roll off your lips comfortably? That's a struggle? Hello, do you think that Ukrainian lives have more value than Palestinian lives, ma'am? No comment? No comment from you either? They're not equal? You can't say they're equal?
Excuse me.
Hi, quick question for you. Do you believe that Palestinian lives have the same value as Ukrainian lives?
Excusez-moi, monsieur.
Do you believe they have the same value?
Bien sûr. Vous n'avez pas le droit de filmer présentement. Faut demander une
I've been
autorisation.
filming here for an
You
hour.
have no right to, sir, to film.
Where does it say I have no right?
Yeah.
Show me,
Sir, you have-
show me where it says I have no right.
Yeah, because this.
That's my report from the Ministerial Conference on the Human Dimension of the Ukrainian 10-point peace plan. Just a couple of closing notes. I emphasize that the title of this conference includes the phrase human dimension. So I would imagine that that was intended to convey that there's a humanitarian aspect to this conference. Humanitarians, one would think, would readily accept the proposition that Palestinian lives are every bit as important as Ukrainian lives. The second thing I want to add as a footnote to this report is that this 10-point peace plan is frankly dead in the water. No one in the halls of power in the West seems to be taking it seriously. It is obvious at this stage, and tragically for the Ukrainian military, that the people of Ukraine, that its military is collapsing on the battlefield, and that this entire NATO proxy war has been proven, as many of us had predicted, to be nothing more than a means by which NATO intended to weaken Russia. This was never, ever about the well-being of the Ukrainian people, and it certainly isn't about human rights or the well-being of the Palestinian people. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada on October 30th, 2024.